day 3 of the ANC's 5th NGC. And as we've been doing all week, I'm joined once again by SABC News' chief, I would say, our correspondents here at the NGC. We have Mzwandile Mbeje, who's, of course, the SABC's news politics editor, as well as our specialist correspondent, Sophie Mokoena. And thanks so much, for making sure that we wade through what is happening here at the 5th NGC this week. It's been interesting from various perspectives. One of the fact that it's not business as usual. It's been a different type of NGC, not just in the mood, but, generally in the way things have been done. Not surprisingly, though, Mzwai.
Well, not surprisingly, and I hope perhaps this lack of interaction with the public space means that they are really hard at work, looking into actually core business of why they even came here in the first place. But of course, looking at the days that we are only left with one day, so there hasn't been really regular briefings insofar as what's happening, leaves us to then source this information from that one or this one, and perhaps end up speculating. Whilst, remember, nature doesn't allow for any vacuum. So once there's a vacuum, somebody's going to take it. Which direction he or she will take it to, that's another story altogether. But we do get a sense that some of the issues that are really being discussed is the issue of the alliance, particularly when the alliance decided, Sophie, that and Sakina, that they are contesting. So it's one of the issues that we are hearing. It's actually perhaps very hot there. In fact, now that we are relying mainly on some of the sources in terms of what's happening, after the speech of the president last night, he was addressing the Freedom Charter celebrations. I had an engagement, just a very brief engagement, with the SACP delegation. I can tell you they were not happy, and the reason was that they felt there was no sufficient acknowledgement of the role the SACP had played. The president delivered a speech just shy of 2 hours, and they felt the SACP's role was actually not acknowledged. I don't know how much that will also impact into the deliberations that are going on.
So yesterday discussion, Sophie, centered around the NDR. It centered around the balance of forces. And of course, we are expecting 17 commission streams today. And part of the issue before we get into that is, of course, the fact that we didn't have a briefing on what was deliberated upon yesterday in the commissions. And we were actually saying that how is this going to play out then at the end when you have a whole raft of briefings? Does it then afford sufficient time to interrogate from the side of the media and question, as is traditionally done, what has been decided here at the NGC?
If you look how the NGC, the National General Council, is conducted, it's quite different from the policy conference, which comes 6 months just before the elective conference. There you have constant briefing, because as soon as there's an adoption of a particular policy position, let's say economic cluster, they come, they say this is the proposal from the delegates and the ANC. Now we're taking this to the Congress, to the conference in December, because it is only the elective conference that adopts policies and after its implementation. So I think there's an argument, or there will be an argument, to say, remember, NGC is introspection. We are not taking policy positions. We are not changing policies, because they don't change policy. You can only change a policy at the elective conference, because that's where you vote for adoption of policies that are presented after the policy conference. So that might be the argument. But I think when I spoke to one person who was chairing one of the commissions, I don't know other commissions, he gave me a sense that there are robust discussions, because he said to me, Sophie, we were supposed to convene at 2:30. but the delegates were there at 2:15, seated, waiting so that we can, discuss this, the documents, and the participation was very robust. So I think on that score, if this is what's happening, I think that's what is supposed to happen at the NGC, discuss and acknowledge. And the fact that they are acknowledging that there was a misstep in terms of the NDR moving away, vein of the road, with all what we saw that led to them losing the outright majority, they have to discuss. And on the issue of the SACP, it is going to be a burning issue until the Congress or the conference of the ANC, because the General Council cannot withdraw from the alliance. You have to put it before the elective conference. It is almost like a policy, because this decision was taken years and years ago. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say, we don't have the alliance anymore. But it is correct for the ANC delegates who are here to debate how are they going to handle this issue, because it is causing tension and it is not normal in terms of how the alliance operates. And therefore, it is within the rights of the delegates to express their views. But at the end of the day, they will then have to find a way before Thursday how they move forward with this, taking into consideration that this matter actually must be before the elective conference to take a decision. But unfortunately, you have elections next year. SACP is going to contest elections, so those tensions are going to be there.
And to be fair to the SACP, that as well is a conference resolution of the
exactly.
SACP.
It's not a midterm review report. It was a conference resolution. So the ANC itself will have to take a conference resolution in terms of way forward. But for now, what the NGC can do is to how do we manage this while we consult more with the structures and perhaps presenting this before the elective conference in 2027.
So obviously, given what has transpired up until this midterm review for the ANC, a lot has happened. Since conference, the NGC has happened, the Government of National Unity, the GNU has happened. We've seen the balance of forces, especially internationally, move drastically. There's so much that has happened. It's not just the war in Gaza. It's not just our relationships with the United States. It's what's happening on the African continent as well that the ANC needs to respond to. So just moving from that perspective, Mzwai, here at home, the balance of forces, the president talking about getting back to basics for ANC members, going back to the ground, doing the door-to-door campaigns, getting back in touch with the ordinary South Africans who, at the end of the day, are the voters.
Indeed, and also having to fight, particularly when it relates to some of the groups within the country who are very influential in terms of exporting a particular message outside, which somehow does also influence the balance of forces within. So the president has been very clear in terms of reconnecting with your base, but that reconnection needed to be done through what is very basic. So the ANC is a servant of the people, from what has been said all along. So the question is that what you are doing? Because once you are doing that, it's easy for you to then win the trust. And then the balance of forces around so many other issues will be easy. Because ideology, yes, it's helpful in terms of giving you direction as to where you're going. But ideology alone won't help you. So you have to have ideology as a foundation on where you want to build, where you want to go. And that will influence a number of people, aspects of your life. And has the ANC got that? Yes, by and large, it's still the majority party. But the fact of the matter is that evidence on the ground is that it is losing trust. How do you then reconnect? You are the parliament of the people. You are the leader of society. So what is it that is distancing you from the very people you serve? So that is one aspect that I would look very keenly when that recommendation or when that report is brought back on the balance of forces, to say how will they read the situation. For example, parties like the DA, who you are in alliance, well, not in alliance, in the GNU, coalition with. Parties like the Freedom Front Plus, who you are in a coalition with. So you have totally different ideologies in terms of how to move the country forward, but you have been forced into this situation. How does that affect your balance of forces going forward? So how much are you able to implement or even push the agenda that will get you to the National Democratic Society, a subject which was very much the question yesterday?
And of course, Sophie, also looking at what has been happening elsewhere. You know, we talk about Donald Trump in terms of what has been happening to South Africa, the retaliation, so to speak, and basically singling South Africa out for particular attention, does the U.S. president. But at the same time, you also have issues that I mentioned about the coups on the continent, but also that peace accord between Rwanda and the DRC, for example, where South Africa played quite an instrumental role. Our troops were there on the front lines, and then suddenly, whoops, here's a peace deal, and we are nowhere.
Well, I think when you listen to last night, when you look at when the president of the ANC was mentioning the content of the Freedom Charter, he mentioned peace and friendship. That's the international relations policy. It's anchored around peace and friendship. No enemies. South Africa doesn't want to have enemies. The country wants, or Pretoria wants, friends, because it's based on that Freedom Charter that made its way to the constitution of the country and the foreign policy of the country. Therefore, South Africa, ANC will have to say, this is our policy. But we have people who have positioned themselves as our enemies. How do we treat them? One advice the ANC got is, it relates to America, is that President Trump is what President Trump is. You have to accept. He's not going to change. He doesn't want to be lectured. He doesn't want to be corrected. And therefore, focus your energy in strengthening your relationship with the Americans, be it business or institutions or friends, any friends that you've had before 1994 who supported your struggle in the Congress, in the Senate. And that's what the ANC must do now, because Donald Trump will go, another person will come. And also, the Republicans might lose the midterm elections next year, and the Democrats might come back strong, as we've seen last night with the results of Miami, where for the first time after 30 years, you have a mayor of coming from the Democrats, because Americans are pushing back. So continue to strengthen your relationship with the Americans. We saw with the tourism numbers, Americans are coming to South Africa in big numbers to visit, and they go back. So just focus on the positive. In relation to Africa, continue to do what you are supposed to do, because you are an African country. You can't divorce yourself. You have to build a better Africa.
We're out of time, but the conversation now has to be much deeper than that. Because one, you are seeing coups, which means that the stance of Africans and Africa is changing. Two, from the G20.
It's because they are not delivering. Those coups are as a result of restlessness and the military, because they know they were part of the political system. Then they take advantage of ordinary people when the nation is restless. This is something that needs to be properly interrogated. The cause, because then you'll get to the answer.
And of course, the whole issue of beneficiation coming from the G20 and you know, looking at that and how Africa and South Africa in particular is going to move from this point onwards.
I think South Africa has really suffered, particularly where it has done so much. I mean, the kind of sacrifices it has put in Congo, for example, really, we're going back to the early 2000s. So South Africa has been there, but look at what is currently happening now. I think the difficulty that we have as the African continent is that it's very easy to divide us as the African continent. We took a resolution as the AU to say in 2020 we are silencing the guns. We took a resolution to say anyone who stages a coup is expelled. How many coups later? How many guns? As we sit here, as we speak here, after Rwanda and DRC in Washington, there is an advance to reclaiming another city. That tells you that we're still very far. South Africa needs to continue to provide that leadership, but I guess maybe it needs to change its strategy a bit, because sometimes to be softy, I don't think it always gives us
On
benefit.
the DRC, I just want to say, on the DRC...
Say it quickly, sir.
Yeah, quickly. What they did in Washington, they just dusted off the Sun City Agreement.
Which is why I say
And they didn't
South Africa
implement
was
it.
very
Now they are not
strategically elbowed
implementing
out.
it. They are now fighting.
The softy approach of ours must stop.
All right. And as you can hear, so much to discuss. Unfortunately, time not permitting.